Today we are continuing our study of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, looking at chapters 16 and 17, the end of the monster's story. But before we jump into our study, I want to thank all of my patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. And I also want to say that if you have not yet visited my Patreon page, you should go check it out. I've got a lot of extra resources there, including guided questions for all of Frankenstein and other works of literature as well. Chapter 16 begins with a very unhappy monster. At the end of chapter 15, he had just ruined his attempt to connect with the DeLacy family, this sweet, loving family that he had been observing from a hiding place for a long time. And he'd gotten to know them, he'd learned how to speak, he'd learned how to present himself and his ideas in words and in language. He had read these great books, and he had learned all about the world, but yet he still is so incredibly ugly that no one can even hear him before they scream and run away. And so he tried to connect with old Mr. DeLacy, the blind old man, and in an attempt to do that, he almost seemed like he was making some progress before the rest of the family got home and drove him away. And this is the part of the monster story where he becomes darker. He is raging and angry. He feels the desire almost for revenge at this moment. He has to cool himself down. But once he finally reaches a cooler point, he begins to reflect and think, okay, I did that wrong. I messed that up. I shouldn't have let them see me. I should have drawn the process out more. I should have gone and visited the old man several times and warmed him up a lot more before I let the rest of the family see me. But he thinks, well, maybe I can sneak back and remain hidden for a long time and eventually have another attempt, have another chance. But he goes back to the house and he hides in his little shed again for a while, and he observes and he waits and he watches, but he doesn't see anyone. And after the whole night goes by and into the next day, he's becoming really agitated and concerned by this. He sees people walk by and kind of point at the house and talk in German, which he doesn't understand. And finally, he sees Felix with the owner of the house talking about how Felix is going to break his lease on the house and just take a loss on it. And he says, no, I can't come back to this house because my father is in terrible danger here. The creature hears that and is enraged. He realizes that the DeLacys are now just going to leave, and he's never going to see them again. He's never going to have another chance. He's ruined it. I continued for the remainder of the day in my hovel in a state of utter and stupid despair. My protectors had departed and had broken the only link that held me to the world. For the first time, the feelings of revenge and hatred filled my bosom, and I did not strive to control them. But allowing myself to be borne away by the stream, I bent my mind towards injury and death. When I thought of my friends, of the mild voice of DeLacy, the gentle eyes of Agatha, the exquisite beauty of the Arabian, these thoughts vanished, and a gush of tears somewhat soothed me. But again, when I reflected that they had spurned and deserted me, anger returned, a rage of anger, and unable to injure anything human, I turned my fury towards inanimate objects. And so he burns the cottage completely to the ground and destroys the garden and everything all around it. We can see, although he had all of these sentiments, like a true romantic, his emotions tend to swing towards high, lofty ideals, but also deep down into the darkness. And now we're getting the reverse of his love of beautiful, artistic things. The movement that he felt when he's experiencing beauty and wonderful things is going to then translate also into the anger of his revenge and hatred. And now he has a new problem. He has nowhere to go and nothing he can do. Doesn't matter where he wanders in the world, obviously everyone's going to hate him everywhere. And so he then thinks of his creator. He remembers Victor from the papers that he found and read, and he also knows where Victor is. Victor lives in Geneva. And thanks to some of the geography lessons he got while listening to the DeLacys teach Safi, he generally knows the direction to go. Of course, he can't stop for directions or anything like that, but he can be guided by the sun and the moon and the broad landmarks that he sees on his journey. He travels mostly by night and obviously avoids people, but at one point when he's in a deserted wood, he feels the freedom to walk in the sunlight. And as he's experiencing the beauty of the birdsong again and the feeling of the sunlight on his face, and he's like, oh, this is so nice. All of a sudden, here runs up this young man and this girl. And of course, he hides himself from them, and he watches them sort of playfully tease each other and chase each other. When all of a sudden, the girl falls into this river, and she is being swept away, and clearly is going to be drowned. And so the monster jumps into the river to save her, because his first instinct is still to help the people around him, not to harm them. He manages to rescue the girl, and he carries her back to the shore, where he's beginning to resuscitate her, when all of a sudden, the man sees him, and runs up and grabs the girl away and begins to run. When the creature starts up and starts to follow, the man turns around and shoots the creature. And the absolute injustice of this just adds to the creature's horror and rage. How dare they hurt him when he just saved this girl's life? Humanity hates him so much and rejects him so much that no matter how good he is, no matter how much he does for them, they turn around and hurt him. This, then, the reward of my benevolence? I had saved a human being from destruction, and as recompense, I now writhed under the miserable pain of a wound which had shattered the flesh and bone. The feelings of kindness and gentleness, which I had entertained but a few moments before, gave place to hellish rage and gnashing of teeth. Inflamed by pain, I vowed eternal hatred and vengeance to all mankind. And so he heals up for a while in the woods, and then he starts on further towards Geneva. When he finally arrives in Geneva, where he hopes to find his creator and get revenge on him, one day he sees a boy playing alone, and the creature suddenly has a new plan. He thinks, okay, here's a little kid. This little kid has not yet grown to have the prejudices of the adult world. Maybe I can take him while he's still a small child and teach him to love me, teach him to overlook my ugliness. And so the creature comes up to the child, who's terrified, and he says, stop struggling, I'm just going to come bring you with me, and you're going to have a happy long life with me now. But the kid is really terrified, and he starts screaming that his father will get the monster. Get away from me, you ogre. My daddy's going to get you. And at first the creature doesn't really care. But when the child mentions that his father is Frankenstein, the creature suddenly realizes this child is in the family of his creator. Frankenstein? You belong then to my enemy, to him towards whom I have sworn eternal revenge. You shall be my first victim. And so he strangles little William. After strangling the boy, he sees the locket around William's neck and he begins to look at it. Inside is this beautiful woman. And again, the creature is very attracted to beauty. And he's torn inside because he is so ugly, and here is this thing of beauty that he can never have. The pain is intense. So he takes the locket with him. And then the creature wanders around looking for a hiding place. When he finds this barn, he thinks it's unoccupied, and he thinks he'll be able to hide in there. And he goes inside, but there he finds Justine sleeping. And as he looks at her, he sees how beautiful she is. And as he's looking at her, he's thinking about how she would smile at people that she loves, but such smiles will never be given to him. And so he leans over her and he says quietly, "Awake, fairest, thy lover is near. He who would give his life but to obtain one look of affection from thine eyes, my beloved, awake." And so he has this feeling that he would just want to be loved. He desires for something beautiful to love him. But when he realizes that she actually is going to wake up, he of course can't be seen by her. She'll just scream and run away like everybody else. And he's suddenly enraged by this fact that no one will ever love him. He deserves love, but no one will ever give it to him. And he decides instead to spread the pain around a little bit. He puts the locket in Justine's pocket. He plants the evidence on her so that she can pay the penalty for his unlovableness. If I can't be loved, you're gonna suffer too. And so the creature left her to be destroyed by the legal system. So that's the end of the creature's story. But at this point, the creature tells Victor what the point all is, why he told him this story. I want you, Victor, to make me a companion. No one loves me. Everyone throws me out and hates me. The entire world turns its hatred on me for no reason other than the fact that I am ugly. Therefore, Victor, you have the power to fix this. You can give me someone I can love. Someone who will love me in return. Make me another one like me. Another creature that I can love. Chapter 17 is the argument back and forth between Victor and the creature over this demand. Victor felt a little sorry for the creature at the beginning of his story, but when it got back to the whole part where he killed Victor's brother, that really angers Victor again, and it stirs up the injustice of everything that's happened. He also begins to fear, if I make another creature, what's to say these two don't just team up and become even worse and spread more evil around the world, and maybe create a whole race of monsters. Victor also throughout the argument emphasizes how he has difficulty sympathizing with the monster just because it's so ugly. Sometimes he can get the monster's point or feel his feeling here, but as soon as he does that, he turns around and he's like, but I can't look at you, you're so hideous, so ugly. But the creature continues to emphasize that the only source of his evil, the only source of his hatred, is the fact that no one loves him. If he just had someone to love, that would fix his problems. As Victor hesitates again and again, the creature at one point says something kind of interesting. He wants to just win Victor to his side by his words, but if that doesn't work, he's willing to apply more pressure than that. He would be willing to accept human love, but the humans refuse to love him. He says, I will revenge my injuries. If I cannot inspire love, I will cause fear, and chiefly toward you, my archenemy, because my creator do I swear inextinguishable hatred. His choice of words here is reminiscent of Machiavelli's The Prince. Machiavelli talks about world leaders and the way they can get people to do what they want. It's always good, he says, to be loved and to lead through the love of your people. However, if that doesn't work, a stronger form is to get them to be afraid of you. And that popular idea from Machiavelli was seen as a villain's perspective. If fear is stronger than love, make them fear you. Shelley is using some of the language of Machiavelli to show how the creature has been forced into becoming a villain, has been pushed into the villain's role by Victor and by the world. This is not what I want, this is not what I choose, but I'll embrace it if I have to. On the other side, though, the creature also emphasizes that he would just as soon be loved by humanity. If any being felt emotions of benevolence towards me, I should return them 100 and 100-fold. For that one creature's sake, I would make peace with the whole kind. But I now indulge in dreams of bliss that cannot be realized. What I ask of you is reasonable and moderate. I demand a creature of another sex, but as hideous as myself. The gratification is small, but it is all that I can receive, and it shall content me. It is true we shall be monsters cut off from all the world, but on that account we shall be the more attached to one another. Our lives will not be happy, but they will be harmless, and free from the misery I now feel. And the creature's like, if you just give me another creature, the two of us can just go live alone, far away in South America, in the wilds where nobody lives. We'll stay away from humanity, we won't bother anybody, and we will live out our own existence, being able to have that companionship together. But Victor thinks, well, you've always wanted to be around humans, you'll just come right back. And you're already evil, you're already full of malice, so the two of you will inflict all of this wickedness on the world. The creature's very frustrated because Victor's clearly not listening and has not taken in the story. And so he has to sort of emphasize vice and virtue. There's the possibility of goodness in me, and there's the possibility of wickedness. But they both stem from something. If I have no ties and no affection, hatred and vice must be my portion. The love of another will destroy the cause of my crimes, and I shall become a thing of whose existence everyone will be ignorant. My vices are the children of a forced solitude that I abhor, and my virtues will necessarily arise when I live in communion with an equal. I shall feel the affections of a sensitive being, and become linked to the chain of existence and events from which I am now excluded. The creature points out that the only reason he has for vice and hatred is his loneliness. His loneliness is driving him crazy and pushing him towards hatred and revenge. But he would become a good thing. He would become virtuous. He would become kind and benevolent if only he had someone to love him. We can also see Victor throughout the book. When he is alone, the more he sets up walls and isolates himself, the darker he becomes. It's when he has Elizabeth and Henry who are clearly interacting with him that he becomes a better person, and yet he has trouble seeing the same thing in the creature. It's difficult for Victor, but finally he weighs all of the evidence and sees that the creature, he must fulfill the creature's demand. He hears the way the creature needs that companionship, and he sees, okay, yeah, I can kind of see that you had those virtues going for you at first. He also sees his own responsibility for the creature, something that he really has trouble grasping throughout this book. For a brief moment he says, I guess I do have a responsibility to you. And there's also, of course, the threat. If I don't do this, this creature will come after me, and there's no way I can stop this thing. He's way too strong for me. I've seen him work, I've seen him leap up the mountainside. He's unkillable. There's no way I can stop this thing. And so he ultimately agrees if the creature will promise to leave humanity alone forever and stay far away from everyone. And the creature promises and says, depart to your home and commence your labors. I shall watch their progress with unutterable anxiety. And fear not, but that when you are ready, I shall appear. When you've finally finished your work creating the other creature, I'll be there. And so he stumbles home, kind of wild-eyed and even more agitated than ever before, and his family embraces him. And he feels this love for his family, but also this recognition that he's about to do this huge action, which will definitely impact his family. If he doesn't do it, they're threatened by the creature. If he does do it, then he's created this new thing that he will unleash on the world, and so all the weight of this is bearing down on Victor as we get to the end of chapter 17. Thanks for watching! You can click to subscribe or to go to my Patreon page where you can find more resources, including guided questions over these chapters. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.